All right, welcome back. We're working on Gem Wars. What we're going to do is we're going to take the logic from for the AI, which is currently handled by a coroutine inside of Unity, and we're going to be moving that over to the TCP server. Let's get started on that. So here, this is my online version of practice, and there is no moves right now, because when we play on the offline version, we want to have the coroutine for movements active. So I need to turn off the back end. It'll try to connect 3 times. If it doesn't hit the HTTP server, it'll populate this, which says, are you sure you want to play offline? And we do, and we'll do a practice. So now this logic is handled by a coroutine. If we wait, we'll see the computer starts to play. There we go. And the computer's got some logic with how it places pieces. And we can play this out until it ends. And you can see it was reading a 6x6 for the size of the game. And if I look at the scriptable object for the rounds, it's a 6x6 currently. Let me try this one more time. From the free play mode. Yeah, the board is a 6x6, which is what we were expecting. Okay. So now, let's take a look at our AI. If I look at the back end here for my scriptable objects match player AI SO, we have these couple of functions in here. We have the AI turn, and that's it. AI turn first checks to see if it can purchase anything. We'll do this in a second. And then what I'm doing in Unity is I'm in one frame instantiating an object, which is the computer's piece, rotating it appropriately, and then checking the individual positions. Now on the server, we have that same logic, but we've modified it so that instead of checking the actual positions in the engine, it's just using math to associate the correct numbers with the rotations. And then here, we're checking to see if there is any position available, because if there is, we add it to this positions available. And if there is, we look for the highest score, and otherwise we look for the minimum number of squares. Then we create that piece and place it and remove it. And then we add it to the board. So let's change this, okay? So over here in my back end, the first thing I want to look at is my base game manager BLL. Now I need to have a timer that ticks for the interval of the computer, okay? But I only want to have one timer in the application. So I'm going to add a new function here called public update. Hey there, Louise Makana. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them into the chat. Thank you for being a part of Pixel Horror Studios. I need to go one more place, just a second. Okay. So now, what I want to do in my update is I want to have a int for my update interval in milliseconds. We'll mark this as virtual as well. And then in my TCP server, where I'm creating all of my services, I want to pass in the one timer here. So when I look at this, let's make this readable. I also want to pass in here a timer. Doing good. Thanks. Nice content, dude. Oh, I appreciate it. If you haven't, check out the YouTube. I put everything up there. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Let me check this. Okay. And now what I want to do is I want to so I don't want the timer here because I just have this update function, right? Inside of here. And that's it. And then we'll override it for each one of these. Because, for example, in multiplayer, we're going to make this a abstract void. Okay. So now, in my game manager, we've got my update. Why do you have this separated twice? Because this is the one that's the manager. Okay. So this is the one that I want to have my update as well, with a interval, update interval. And what I want to do is for each one of my game managers, I want to do a game manager.update. Which is going to need my update interval. Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Luis. Okay, so now that this is cascading and updating through, up here, I want to have a new, let's make a new global. And I want to have it called a int global update interval. Perfect. That's the BLL there. So here, I want to do a var timer equals new timer. And I want to have a on timer callback. And we'll do that for null for right now. And then my globals dot, do you have that as a variable or is everything here? We'll look at that in a second. So here, I want to do a services dot add singleton. And we want to do an options with this. And we want to return a new timer with my on timer callback. And here we want to do a options dot get service. And it's of type iGlobals. And then we get this update interval. Like that. And we're going to say no state and the 2 intervals. So the issue that I'm running into in my head is that I'm not going to be able to iterate over them here. So let's move this timer logic to be inside of my worker. So we'll have a private read-only timer. And then in here, I want to say timer equals new timer, and we're going to say on timer callback 0. We need to pass in the iGlobals called globals. Hey there, great gamer. Welcome back. It's good to have you with us. How are you doing today? It's going good for me. And then we want to say the timer here is going to be globals dot global update interval, like that. And then here I want to have a protected virtual void called on timer callback, which passes in an object of type state. Just chilling. Me too. I got the air conditioner on. It's super hot down here in Ventura, Southern California. Okay, so now on dispose, I want to say timer.dispose. And so now on my timer, I want to do a game manager.update my and we want to add a protected private read-only integer for the global update interval. Like that. And that's it. So now we have one timer, which we'll dispose, and we want to say everything should be running at this point. Okay. So then in the game manager, currently sitting at 2:40 p.m. It's 12:40 here. I know kind of where you're at. Yeah, it's hot. We're in like a heat wave, I think, right now. Okay. And so now what I want to do is when I'm looking inside of my single player BLL, I have to implement my update function. Okay. And what we're going to do in here is we need to check the game dot what's inside of my generic here. Games. For each var game in games, we want to do a if my game dot game type is equal to game type dot practice, then we're going to do a game dot update for my update interval milliseconds. Hey, Fallen Hope. Welcome to the channel, man. It's good to have you with us. How are you doing on the, I don't think it's a holiday for you, but how are you doing today? So inside of my game single player, we're going to add a new function here called public virtual void update with a integer called update interval. And in this, the first thing that I want to do is I need to set, well, we'll leave it like this for a minute. We need to say we need to add logic for the in the database for the different computer player profiles. But what I want to do is I want to say for each, and is it game player in it's called rounds. This will work for each var round in rounds. I want to do a round.update, and we're going to pass in the update interval. This looks very familiar, right? Okay, same thing. And I'm doing this because so you're working on multiplayer right now? Yeah, I'm adding the computer AI logic to the server, and then everything is set up at that point to start up to do matchmaking. Yeah, it's kind of an exciting moment. It is, at least I think, because I haven't been working. Okay, so in this, if I look at my round generic, I have a number of match sets. So we're going to pass this into a var match set and match sets. Okay, I'm doing this for a reason, cascading through it. So here, same thing. Public virtual void update in update interval. And what I want to do is for each one of my matches, match.update. Now, I want to go back. So where you were doing this, let's just go back. I'm not happy with this. I'll just change it just a little bit. We're going to move this to game. Because each one of these is going to have it. And now I want to go to my round single player, and we're going to pull this and put it in the generic. Same thing again for the match set. I'm going to pull it from here and put it in the generic. And then I don't think I've done it for matches yet. Nope. So in this one, we want to have a public virtual void update. And I want this to have a int for the update interval. And it's, we have a number of boards, a number of match players. That's where I want to be. You also probably should do it for the boards as well. So we'll do for each var match player in match players. And then for each var board in boards. And this is because all of these are stateful. So match player dot update, update interval, board dot update, update interval. On my match player, I'm going to add in here a public virtual void update, which is going to be a int update interval, and we have a match, a game player, but I thought I already was getting game players, and a BLL. So we're almost through it. This is the last one, match player, down this track. So we'll just leave it like that. If I look back here at game, here's your game players. So we also want to do this for the game players, and that's it. Okay. Now I want to go move this . So this actually goes on the BLL here. I could have put this update on all the base BLLs, but this is fine because it forces me to do the logic. And then I can do this. And then here I can do an override. And then a base.update for my update interval. Like that. So my game player has a number of drawers on them. We'll just stop it right here. Public virtual void update and update interval, and we'll just have nothing anymore here. Okay. Oops, what was that one? Board. We wanted to have a match player board, also draw pieces, and a match. We'll just add it in here, just to be safe. A public virtual void update with an update interval. Okay. All right, now that that's done, all the way down in game generic player, game player generic, here's the update. According to Wikipedia, Google, my mom, it's a holiday. Okay, this game player here, this is my update in the BLL. I think it should be in the match player board. But that's instantiated, so it needs to be in the match player. Okay. So if I look at my match player BLL, here's the update. Now I have a match single player and a match multiplayer. I'm going to change this to be called, no, that's fine. Okay, so my single player here, no, match player, this one. We need to have one more of this, which is a match single player AI BLL. Okay. And so now in the business logic layer, for when I pull my single player BLL here, this creates all of the objects, and right here it's creating my match player. But I want the match set, single player, round single player. I'm looking for match player BLL. Right here. Now, if my match player dot And now I want to get the game player ID. Because we'll have that, but we won't have a player ID. This is coming from the VM. So if I look at this, this is a match player instance ID, which has a game player. And the game player you could get it right there. So we could say var game player equals match player equals game players dot first or default, where my game player DTO dot ID is equal to match player dot game player ID. So if my game player dot is AI, where is that? Game player DTO. Just a second. So the game player DTO doesn't have it on it, but I can tell because my player ID is equal to null. So if this doesn't have a value, then I want to do this. Otherwise, I want to do this. Perfect. So if it has a value, we want to do the single player one. If it doesn't have a value, then this. Hey there, Mike the Modeler. How are you doing? Welcome to the channel. If you have any questions, when I'm working on, don't hesitate to pop them into the chat. God is AI, dun dun dun. Fallen Hope, how's the sound today? I have the air conditioner on, and then I'm just using this microphone, so I'm just wondering how it sounds. This is an AI player because it does not have a player ID. Like that. Match player BLL. This needs to be abstract. I wonder why that wasn't. Okay. And this is why I was confused, because I have another little bug. This is match player single match single player BLL, and this is match single player AI BLL. Why does this need boards? Because this is a match single match player BLL. Okay. Perfect. And now this one is a same deal like that. And now we can start to add our logic. Because I've exposed here a public public override update. We want this to be a different object here. We want this to be an AI instance DTO. So in the library, underneath my instances for match player instance, I'm going to copy it and make one called AI instance DTO. And what I want to have here is my two pieces of information about this AI, which is a int for my, let me look at my game. If I look at my where would I have put that? Just a second. If I look at my practice offline on my game manager board, where would I have put that? If I open this up, I'm going to search for your match player AI. This is being invoked from here on the game manager offline. And it's pulling it from the board. Perfect. Perfect. So it's coming from the board, which means that on the back end, I don't want to put this here. I want to make this a match player board AI instance DTO. And this is the one I want to have my override for the update. Oops, I'm in the wrong type of object. That's why this isn't here. So we don't need this as a DTO. We only need it as a BLL. So we're going to change this to be a match player board AI BLL. And this is a match player board BLL. And now in my match player board, I want to add the update. And now what I want this to do is my AI logic goes here. So in my match, in my game single player, I'm not sure what that's mad at me about. Let's go ahead and build it. It says my match single player BLL can't connect to the I don't understand what I did. Oh, it's match player generic or something, right? I don't know what I did. Let's look at the source tree. You changed match single player BLL to inherit from match player BLL. That's it. There it is. Because this is a match single player BLL. We're just going to clear this one out. That should fix it. Okay, this one needs to have an update. Crap. If I look at my game manager single player, you have your update. We're going to move this to be on the generic because that's where those lie. you have it here on this one. Abstract update. Right there. Crap. Not that big of a deal. Okay, I gotta implement that new function. I'm gonna say that it's gonna be 250 milliseconds. Okay. And then if I look back at my error list, in multiplayer, it can't make one of these, so it needs to be multiplayer. Which needs to be a match player BLL. Says that this one needs to go to match BLL. I made that mistake last time. There we go. I want this to be a, where's my match single player BLL? It's just a match generic BLL, and it's going to be for a match instance DTL. This one, you're not going to have the boards yet because you need to use your match players. No, this is boards. So we'll just move this to be down here. And this wants a list of the board BLLs. Which is here. So we'll go back up here and change this one because our boards are not available yet. Like this. That's right. So no boards. And no boards here. Just a second. So it's upset at me because you've got two things here. You've got matches, and then you've got match players. So if I look at my match single player BLL, this is a match generic, like that. And my match multiplayer is good. So this is a match player. Which is no longer abstract. We do. God damn it. If I go into the source tree for the match multiplayer BLL, I want to discard this. For the match single player BLL, I want to discard this. And then for the match generic, I want to discard this hunk. Okay. And this is where we're going to do it, match player board. So this is a match player board dot, and we have a match player ID. So we can say var match player equals match players dot first or default x where my ID x where my match player DTO dot ID is equal to this ID. And then I want to say if my match player dot game player dot player ID and this has something called isLocal. That won't work for us. We don't need that. But what I do want to say is that if my player is not equal to null, then we want to do this, else this is AI. Match player board AI BLL. We're not going to leave it like that, but let's just keep going for a second. So what this is doing is it's going through each one of your match player boards. It's creating it. It's adding it to the array, and then it's going back through all the match players and it's adding the match player board if it matches, right? No, this is adding it to all of the match players. That makes sense. Okay. Match player selected. We'll change this too. Okay. And so now this is my AI, and we can add it. Like that. Like that, okay? So now we've added the AI one. And so here what I'm just going to do for right now is I'm going to say console.log, console.writeLine, update from AI. Okay? And let's build it. Did you do that in the multiplayer? Yep. That's fine. Let's just move this over into the single player. Okay, let's keep going. So match BLL needs to get reset. And that should be it. Good. Okay. So now we're going to test it. I'm going to run the backend, and we should see iterations on the console for when the game is started in multiplayer mode online. And we want to double check that because we're in the it's under the match generic. Underneath the board. Match player boards. Good, I caught this. For each var match player board and match players boards, we want to do a match player board dot update of my update interval. So in my single player, for each one of my match players' boards, let's just see what happens here. So when I run the game, oops, I have to start from title. And we start this. Why didn't it load? Let's see what's going on here. Oh, there it is. No, it loaded. It just took a bit. Okay, so here it is. So on my match player boards, we have two. One with so we're going to look at my match player selected. This one has a game player with no player. And then the second one also doesn't have a player. So what that means are you never assigning your player? Let's try that again. So it looks like it was working a little bit. Let's clear this window. Try the game again. I'm going to watch the console on a different monitor for a little bit. It says connected. We'll do a practice. It's going to request everything from the back end. Give it a second. Now it's ticking. So that worked. Interesting. Is that happening for when it's offline as well? Let me kill the back end. Try it again. That one works fine because it's offline. So I've got different logic in there for if it's online and offline. But what did happen now is that this match player board is created. Right? Let's make sure of that. So we'll lock down here. I want to run it again. There it is. So for my match player selected, my game player doesn't exist. And for the next one, my player does exist. So it's human. Pardon me. Okay. So what's going on with this when we're going to the live one on Practice AI? Let's look at the game manager. Okay. Here it's creating the player object for the computer because it's practice. But this should all come from online. And then if we also look at our practice UI script, I think it was this which was erroring out. Let's check it again. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, match player boards. Let's just break it here. Game received, we created in the database. That's right. Okay. So now when I run this, there we go. My match player boards. I have two. One's the AI, which is what we want. And this says it's failing because the game.player local isn't there. Because I removed the isLocal tag from that player. So let's get rid of this. Now you need this here because where this init is being called, and create player, That's not right either. But if I look at my game manager online where I create my players, if it is a computer and then if the player is local. So I want to say this is going to be my data cache dot player dot ID. We're going to get rid of this. Is equal to player dot ID. That should do it. Okay, we're going to run it again. There it is. Now it's working. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to use our timer and we need to detect what times we want to have this for our player. So what I mean by that is when I look at the boards, each board has these times associated with it: turn, interval, and offset. So in Gem Wars, on the back end, inside of my, pardon me, match player AI BLL, this one I want to have my set board, which is going to be a board BLL. Looks like you already have that in the other layer. Okay. So what I want to do here is I want to have a protected int for an index. And now I want to say if my index plus my update interval, we're going to do a index plus equals my update interval. And if my index is greater than my board dot board DTO dot board SO dot, and then it's a and then I want to have a integer here for my next turn index. And we want to say this is equal to the board dot board SO dot the AI interval seconds times 1,000 and then I want to do that divided by my board. We want to have a var random equals, so in this we want to pass in a random, right? And then we can say random number equals a random dot next. And my minimum value is going to be match player board. I'm sorry, it's the board.board.so.offset times a -1 and the board.board.so.offset. So we want to multiply this by 100. And we want to do this as an int dot parse, or just an int, cast it as the int. Then we want to do this times 100 and do this as an int. And then we want to divide that by 100f. So we're going to make a new protected virtual void called set next turn index. And then you're going to do AI turn seconds times 1,000 plus your random actually, you could just do this as a times 1,000. This is going to be random milliseconds, like that, and like that. And now we want to say protected bool is turn is running turn is turn active. So I want to say if my is turn is not active, then we want to add this. And now if my next turn index, if my index is greater than or equal to my next turn index, then we're going to say is turn active equals true. I'm going to say my index equals 0. We're going to do a bunch of things here in tasks.run. And at the end of that, we're going to do a set next turn index. And then I'm going to do a is turn active equals false. That should be my timer for this match player AI board. And now in this, I need to pass in my random. If I look at where this is being called, your random is, you need to create a new random for this one in your single player game manager. Var random equals new random. Cool. So now, pardon me. We need to do the same thing in multiplayer. Okay, let's give it a run. And now we should see our console update every like 3 to 5 seconds. It says board SO is not set. But I know we do set that, so we're going to say if my board.board does not equal to null. Nope, we're going to do a do. I don't want to do this yet. We want to do this after the board has been assigned. So we're going to have a public override set board and then do a set next turn index. Let's try it again. Okay, let's run it. Okay, we're going to go practice. There it is. There it is, update from AI. It looks like that we're getting multiple games though. Oh, because it's adding it. It doesn't know if it needs to do it. It's interesting why we're getting multiple calls. If I do this again and I look at my generic, where we're requesting our game received, We're going to check this one and then this one. Let me stop the back end and we'll restart it. Because I think I'm getting duplicate requests. Try it again. So this one I'm getting one request. Try it again. That one I got one request. So I must have something coded badly in here on my match player AI. Because this update is going to run anytime. So we're going to say protected bool is update running. We'll say if my is update is not running, then we want to say is update running equals true. If my turn is not active, down here I can say is update running is false. Now I want to turn this into a volatile, but I think that'll be a mistake. And it might be happening because of this task.run. But let's try it one more time. Still not doing what we're expecting here. So let's go and try something else in the back end. I'm going to get rid of this here. Make it synchronous here. Let's try it again, just synchronously. Give it just a second. Okay, the back end has started. So let's go ahead and try it again. It's still doing it too many times. So let's go figure out what's going on with this service. This is bizarre. Let's just try this for a second, making these volatiles. If that doesn't work, then I gotta go figure out why this synchronous operation is failing. Is it because, no, match player board is only being created one time. If I look at where this is being created, going through each one of the rounds. Yeah, I know. In the generic single player, you do it here. Okay. Now when I look at my games, I only have one, which has one round, one match set, 7 matches. That's the problem. And my match players here, we have 2. So why do we have 7 of these things being created? Because here on the back end, when you are doing your data access layer work, and we request a game single player, you're creating your round, you're creating your match set. Now, this is for single player. we look at for multiplayer, we do want this. Number of matches is passed in. But for single player, it's just one. So we'll do it here. We're going to add this new array. Which is going to be your game players. For this, we can do my game players dot select the just to array. Let's make sure I didn't break anything there. Now it should work right. So first, let's make sure the open play works. And now when I look at the game, it's got one round with one match set with one match with one board and 5 draw pieces. So that looks right. Okay, that works. Now we'll try it multiplayer. That looks good. And now when I look here, we see that the update is at the correct intervals. So back in here, I can clean back up my models here for the AI BLL. And then here we're going to do a task.run of an asynchronous like that. Okay, so now our timer is set up and working correctly. So the next thing that we need to do is we need to calculate our move. So we're going to make a protected virtual void calculate next move. And when I look at my logic on the front end for my scriptable object match player AISO, what I want to do is this. So we're going to have a bool here called AI turn. So here what I was having is something called a piece position, which is a class I've created. Just contains a few things in here. So we'll copy that class in. And we want to have a vector2 for the position of the piece, the piece itself, you don't need this one. I just can use this drawer BLL, just like that. And now what you want to do is you want to do your match player dot game player dot available drawers. So drawers. So for each one of my drawers, for my game player, where the piece is not null, now we're going to check to see if we can add it to the board. So to do that, I should have a board dot add piece to grid, and I have a, if I look at this one, now what I want to do is I want to look at this, check if piece can be placed on board. So this is a piece at a position. So we're going to say can add piece to board. So here, this is going to be your positions, and this is going to be your drawer BLL. You don't need to worry about most any of this stuff, I don't think. And this is your board script dot board, sorry, just board dot board DTO dot size, no, board SO dot size of Y. And this is my size of X. Then we're going to make a new vector. And I have it that I'm, come on, there we go. I have it that I'm changing the transform there. So this is actually going to be a board dot can add piece to board of the piece and my position, which is this. this needs to be a public. Did I lose my microphone or my cable to my headphones? I think it was this one, okay? Okay. And now you need to have this thing on board script called calculate potential scores. And then you're going to return your piece positions. So over here, I'm going to go get the calculate potential score. Right here. Right here, we're going to have a new public virtual piece position. Like that. Now, where we have my calculate points, check for lines is in board current right here. So we can use this as the guide for this one. And this one we want to get the blocks here, and then we're just going to QA/QC what's happening. So we're going to clear out my number of line blocks and lines. We're going to check all of the positions for a horizontal or vertical line. Then we're going to add everything, create this new lines BLL. We're not doing this. We're not clearing them. And then you're never adding this to the database, right? This is creating your lines. So we're never doing that. Okay, that looks good. So back over here, we check to see if we can add this to the board, which is drawer.piece. This is a simulate check for lines of your piece. Why do you need this? You don't need to worry about this one either. Or your match player even, right? What are you using match player for? We're going to call this calculate lines. And we can see if we can get rid of this match player. Looks like we can. This is fake, so this is just a GUID.newGUID. Okay. Like that. Then you're going to add all of those to your positions available. Now, if you have any of those, we're going to select the highest point position. If no points for any moves, select the one with the least number of squares to complete the line. And then here you have your piece position selected, and this one you want to send to TCP server. And what I want to do is, actually, let me look back at this real quick. Yeah, that's all fine. You want to take your matchplayer.gameplayer dot drawers dot we want to have a new function in here called public virtual void remove piece from drawers, and you want to say it's a piece BLL. You want this to be on game player. And you want to say for each var drawer in drawers, if your drawer.piece does not equal to null, and your drawer.piece dot piece DTO ID is equal to your piece.piece DTO dot ID. Then you want to do a drawer dot clear piece, and then you want to do a return. Remove piece from drawers of my piece position dot drawer dot piece. Little redundant there. I think we could do this a little bit easier and a little more efficiently by just going piece position dot drawer dot clear piece. And now I want to do my board dot add a piece to the grid. Which is going to be your piece position. First, you want to get your var selected piece equals piece position dot drawer dot piece. Now you want to say selected piece dot piece DTO dot position. Where's the position on here? So it's for each one of the blocks. We want to do the same thing, but what I want to do is I want to have this down here like that, and I want to have a new vector 2 for my position. And so what I want to do is this logic. And I want to say for each one of my piece blocks in piece, I want to set the translated position. And I want to say that this is my piece block SO dot position. Relative position X, no. Piece block SO dot Okay, so the thing that you need to do here is that you're going through the individual piece block SOs. This needs to be a block. And now what I want to do is I want to get my var piece block equals a piece dot piece block SOs dot first or default X, where my ID is equal to my block dot crap. Just a second. Well, that's where you set the position. But the issue is that your piece blocks tell me the relative position. Which means each one of your blocks should have a piece block instance. If I go look at where this is created, but it doesn't know what the relative positioning is. It doesn't know what this one is. I don't have a way to associate a piece block to a block. But what I can do is I could do a for loop for my piece.blocks.length. And then select my piece block of I. Like that. Get my relative position and set that to my piece.block of I dot position block DTO dot position. X is my piece block, is my translated block position dot X. And then this one is dot Y. And then when that's done, all you have to do is return your add piece to grid of the piece. So back over in the player, you've got your clear piece. You're going to add this to your selected piece in your piece position dot position. And that's it. That should do it for your AI turn. Now you need to send this over TCP. So we have I'm not passing in my server. So in my generic is where in my game manager is where I'm handling this. So when I want to send something to the server, I'm passing in my TCP server here. Is right here, TCP server send a connection. And this is a play piece. So that means that in my match player AI BLL for match player board, we want to pass in the TCP server auth of a GUID. TCP net server auth. And this is going to be a protected TCP server. Call it TCP server of a GUID called TCP server. I want this to be read-only, and this one as well. Which means that over here, I need to bring in the TCP net server auth of a GUID called TCP server. And then down here, we're going to do a public virtual asynchronous task of a bool called AI turn async. And now I'm going to do a await my TCP server dot send to. It's actually a group. But you want to send this now. If I look at how we're currently doing that again, I'm only sending this to the connection that requested it. So now what I need to do is I need to associate that connection. So we'll do a await AI turn asynchronous. And then what I want to do here is a JSON convert dot serialize object. And I want to serialize a new action play piece VM, something like that, right? This one. And then we need to send it to a connection. So for each var game player in my match player dot game player dot game dot game players, we're going to add a new game BLL called game. We'll do a private set. And then I want to do a public virtual void set game, game BLL game. And then in your single player, after you create your game, you want to do for each var game player and game players game player dot set game to be game BLL. I want to put that also in the multiplayer one. And then we're going to send this here like this. And when I look at my game player, I want to add in my connection information, which is called a iConnection server. Like that. So now I want to say if my game player.connection does not equal to null, then you want to send this over TCP to them, which is going to go to my game player.connection. And we're going to send a whole bunch of pieces of information with this. There's this new action which you had to create. The new action type is, come on, play piece. My piece is a selected piece. And it looks like you're doing the same logic here. So we'll deal with that in a minute. This is a piece VM, so we'll have to construct that. Let's see, we also have to add the action. Success is going to be true. The position X is my, we don't have that yet, and my position Y, we don't have that yet. My lines, we don't have that one yet. My board next is my next board if we have one. And my go to next board is a next board does not equal to null. Now, I think what would be easier is if we fire an event here and handle this over in the generic for the game manager. But I got to take a break. I've been going for 2 hours. If you have any questions, make sure you pop them in the chat. We'll be back in 15 minutes. I put all these videos up at youtube.pixelhorrorstudios.com, and also make sure you check out the Discord at discord.pixelhorrorstudios.com. See you guys in just a little bit.